Nach vielem Hin und Her hat US-Präsident Donald Trump am vergangenen Wochenende den Angriff auf die iranischen Nuklearanlagen befohlen. Trump und seine Regierung sprechen von einem großen Erfolg. Irans Nuklearprogramm sei, wenn nicht ganz vernichtet, so doch um Jahre zurückgeworfen worden. Stimmen aus dem Iran hingegen betonen, dass anreicherungsfähiges Uran rechtzeitig in Sicherheit gebracht worden sei und der entstandene Schaden durch den US-Angriff innerhalb kurzer Zeit wieder aufzuholen sei. Wie ist deine Einschätzung? War Trumps Angriff ein Erfolg?
I think Trump's attack was political theater. Unfortunately, it's theater that puts lives at risk, the lives of the American service members involved, lives of Iranians on the ground. But it didn't set the Iranian program back any more than it had already been set back by earlier Israeli strikes on Natanz and Isfahan. Iran had evacuated the high-value technology from these sites. The enriched uranium that everybody seems to be so concerned about has likewise been evacuated and stored in undisclosed locations. The advanced centrifuge technology that could be used to transform the 60% enriched uranium into weapons-grade uranium remains intact. So, we are where we were at the start, where Iran is a threshold nuclear power, and all that's missing is a decision from the supreme leader to weaponize a very dangerous situation because now one could make the case that Iran has greater incentive to actually become a nuclear power, given what has happened to it. So far, it doesn't seem that Iran is going down that path, but this conflict, the purpose of this conflict was to neutralize or retard Iran's nuclear ambitions. I think it failed.
Washington warnte Iran unmittelbar nach der Aggression vor einem möglichen Gegenschlag auf US-Personal in der Region. Der Iran reagierte dennoch und beschoss die bereits vorher evakuierte US-Basis Udeid in der katarischen Hauptstadt Doha mit Raketen. Eine Rakete soll Berichten zufolge eingeschlagen sein. War das ein symbolischer Gegenschlag? Welche Botschaft will der Iran damit aussenden? Konnte oder wollte er keine größere Reaktion zeigen?
Well, just like Donald Trump's bombing of 3 empty facilities in Iran was political theater, Iran's retaliation by firing missiles at an empty airbase in Qatar was likewise political theater. I think President Trump made clear through his actions that he was not seeking a broader engagement with Iran, and Iran, through its retaliation, was making the same statement, that this is a fight between Iran and Israel, not Iran and the United States, and that Iran had no desire to escalate this conflict. I think Iran was also operating under the guidance of its diplomatic allies, Russia and China, who have been encouraging Iran to limit their military action to legitimate self-defense. That is, they can respond to Israeli aggression, but not to broaden the conflict regionally in a manner that would be detrimental not only to Iran, but to the entire world, including Russia and China. And it appears that Iran not only received that message, but has acted on that message.
Unmittelbar nach der israelischen Aggression reagierte der Iran mit einer Fülle an Raketenangriffen gegen Israel, darunter auch Hyperschallraketen der neuesten Generation. Die israelische Luftabwehr war eindeutig überfordert und es gab zahlreiche Treffer. In den letzten Tagen jedoch setzte der Iran vor allem ältere Raketentypen ein und nur in geringer Zahl. Wie erklärst du diese Entwicklung? Welche Rolle spielte dabei die israelische Lufthoheit? Hat Israel zu viele der iranischen Raketenabschussanlagen zerstört?
I mean, we're not going to know the full extent of the effectiveness of the Israeli air campaign against Iran, if ever. The Iranians, may not want to release the data. Iran was prepared for a war of this nature, but you're never really prepared until the first round comes across the battlefield and you find out, all plans get thrown out at the first contact with the enemy. Israeli intelligence is very good. It's possible that the Israelis were able to locate, the Iranian missile stores, were able to effectively track Iranian mobile launchers. And if this was the case, we could have seen a situation where Iran had a missile stockpile that was diminishing. And maybe Israel was able to effectively interdict, the stores of the more capable missiles. We don't know. We do know that Iran did fire some very modern missiles at the end. It wasn't older missiles. It was newer missiles that Iran was firing into Israel, newer models, hypersonic models with advanced warheads, but they were in lower numbers. This might have been because Iran was planning for a longer campaign. This might be because missiles weren't available because of Israeli effectiveness. We don't know, but what we do know is that Iran was inflicting serious harm on Israel, and so this isn't just about Iran having diminished capacity. Israel was being hit very hard, and I also think we need to be careful about the concept of air supremacy. Iran is a very big country, very difficult country to defend. And so we don't want to read too much into Israel's ability to operate over Iran. What we do know is Iran was able to launch missiles against Israel up until the very last moment. And if the purpose of the Israeli Air Force was to prevent that from happening, it failed.
Wie würdest du sagen, dass der Iran seine Angriffe auf militärische Ziele beschränkt hat?
Even the Israeli government acknowledges this. There are people from the Israeli government who've spoken off the record to Israeli media that says that Iran is a very advanced power and their strikes have been, focused on Israeli military and industrial facilities. And that any effort to paint the Iranians as, arbitrarily striking civilian targets is wrong.
Am Dienstag verkündete US-Präsident Trump, Israel und Iran haben einen Waffenstillstand geschlossen. Bis zu unserem Interview scheinen sich beide Seiten daran zu halten. Folgt man den medialen Diskursen auch in den sozialen Medien, so sehen viele Experten, darunter auch Iran-freundliche, Israel als großen Sieger des Konfliktes an, militärisch wie politisch. Stimmst du dieser Sichtweise zu? Hat Israel seine Kriegsziele erreicht? Und was ist mit dem Iran?
Well, there's no doubt that Israel and its supporters in the media will spin this as Israel achieving its war aims. But what were Israel's war aims? I mean, let's take a look at the initial attack, the surprise attack, the illegal act of aggression carried out by Israel on the night of June 12th and 13th. They struck Iran's nuclear targets, and they tried to decapitate Iran's leadership. Today, we find that Iran's nuclear program has been successfully evacuated and hidden, and the leadership is intact and functioning. Meanwhile, Israel, over the course of a dozen days, has received horrific damage. We don't, because the Israeli government put a media blackout in, we don't know the extent to this damage, what was done, but we know that what we saw was very, very tough for Israel to sustain. I don't think Israel accomplished any of its objectives. This was a mistake on the part of Benjamin Netanyahu. If Israel was truly concerned about Iran's nuclear program, there were ongoing negotiations between the United States and Iran that could have produced results that would have been more meaningful and enforceable than the situation we find today. Iran will more than likely return to, compliance with the NPT, but who can blame them for walking away? When the International Atomic Energy Agency is working hand in glove with Israel to take information gained through inspector access to sensitive Iranian sites and turn those into targets for the Israeli Air Force, why would Iran ever work with this organization again? So in many ways, Israel faces a much more dangerous situation, a much more unpredictable situation. This was a horrible mistake for Israel.
Es steht zu erwarten, dass Israel den Waffenstillstand nutzen wird, um sich massiv aufzurüsten und zukünftigen iranischen Gegenschlägen besser gewappnet zu sein. Die israelische Strategie dürfte auch zukünftig darin bestehen, die iranischen Raketen am Boden zu neutralisieren. Viele Experten rechnen damit, dass Israel versucht, Iran in ein neues Libanon zu verwandeln und dort ungestraft zu bombardieren. Was wird der Iran tun, um sich dagegen zu wehren? Wird er vermehrt auf russische Luftabwehrsysteme setzen? Wird er nun zügig Atomsprengköpfe entwickeln, um ein glaubwürdiges Abschreckungspotenzial zu besitzen?
Well, I don't know why we've stopped talking about Iranian ballistic missiles. There's a reason why Israel asked for the ceasefire first. Let's never forget that. Iran didn't come begging to the United States saying, please, please stop this war. Israel came begging to the United States saying, we cannot allow this war to continue another week. Why? The F-35s need maintenance. 12 days of constant combat rotation. These planes are breaking down. They're not working. They can't fly. Air defense is being diminished. The Iranian ballistic missiles are starting to hit real targets or causing real damage to Israel. So let's stop the fiction that somehow Israel dominated this war. Israel got its ass handed to it by the Iranians. That doesn't mean that Israel didn't do damage to Iran. Clearly, Iran was looking for an out of this war too, because it was suffering damage as well. But to pretend that Israel went in there and dominated like they did in Lebanon is absurd. Look at Israel today. It is a destroyed nation. A destroyed nation. So what would Iran do? Destroy Israel. Iran's fully capable of doing that. They have ballistic missiles. They can fire these missiles continuously. So, yeah, I'm not buying into the Israeli fiction that they've somehow dominated this battlefield. They were begging the United States for a ceasefire. Begging the United States.
Warum hat der Iran diesem Waffenstillstand zugestimmt? Warum hält er sich zurück, wenn er, wie du sagst, nur Schritte davon entfernt war, Israel komplett zu besiegen?
Because Iran is not Israel. Iran is governed by people who believe in humanity. Iran is a nation that actually loves its citizens. Iran is a nation that said the damage being done to Iran, is tragic. And Iran secured its nuclear capabilities. Iran sent a signal to Israel that you can't act without consequence. And, the question now is, does Iran go down a path that leads to more death and destruction, or does it bring an end to a conflict that it already made its principal points on and now relying on its major partners, Russia and China, to create diplomatic interference to Israel and the United States so that Iran can economically recover and get onto the business of joining BRICS and expand? I mean, this is the difference between being governed by psychopaths, Israel, and being governed by responsible leadership, Iran. Iran didn't start this war. Let's never forget that. I mean, just for 1 second, never forget, Iran did not start this war. Israel did. So stop equating Iran with Israel. That's like equating a mass murderer with, the most noble, philanthropic priest. You can't make that comparison.
Liebe Zuschauer, wenn euch unsere Beiträge gefallen, teilt sie unbedingt in den sozialen Medien. Abonniert unseren Kanal und drückt auf die Glocke, damit ihr keine Veröffentlichung von Gegenpol verpasst.